This video is about film. What it is not going to be is another one of those generic productions where some monotone-voiced and bizarrely sombre millennial that has only just discovered the medium in the past few years espouses the importance of the philosophy of slowing down and the aesthetic value of the film look, whatever the fuck that is, all the while some melancholic stock soundtrack plays in the background. No, the truth is that I don't really care whether you shoot film or not, and in actual fact, if push came to shove, I would probably actively advise against doing so. It is an increasingly expensive medium, limited in its versatility, particularly in low light, and the results, let's be honest, are often disappointing at best. Extra grain and fuzzy out of focus areas do not a great picture make. These are just some of the reasons that I personally stopped shooting film almost entirely for a year and a half or so after a lifelong love affair with the format. Now, to back things up quickly here, I have spent decades collecting and experimenting with different film cameras. I would often shoot with 35mm or medium format in commercial situations where digital would have been far cheaper and much more reliable, purely because I preferred how it looked and also the experience of doing so. I truly enjoyed it and loved it. As a student, I could probably have done with going down the digital route, but the heart wants what the heart wants. Now, I have shot and developed hundreds, if not thousands, of rolls of film at this point, both colour and black and white. Some of my all-time favourite pictures were shot on film. I've even tried all those weird and wonderful alternative processes like developing pictures in coffee and all that bullshit that you play about with. Now, unfortunately, as time has traipsed on, the cost of both film and chemicals have gone through the roof. Even my attempts to mitigate some of this by bulk rolling spools and processing in my kitchen sink, at risk of poisoning all of our food, as my wife is wont to remind me of, have lost the economic advantages that they once may have brought. Now, despite the apparent resurgence in popularity that film is seemingly enjoying, at least according to the hipsters on YouTube that I sometimes am forced to suffer through, it simply isn't as accessible as it once was. On top of this, I found that many of the savings that I was attempting to make were more and more frequently resulting in poorer and poorer results. Colour processing in particular, the chemicals were getting harder and harder to find. If you've ever processed them on your own, you might remember that tetanol became really difficult to source for a while, and the process was becoming more elaborate than ever. The final straw for me was when I spent a full 2 days in Edinburgh shooting at the Fringe Festival. I was taking street portraits, I was going up to people and asking if I could take their picture, really getting into the whole thing and building my confidence, only to discover that when I developed the roles sometime later on, that the results were more than disappointing. As it turns out, my old Canon 50mm f1.2 LTM lens had fallen victim to this recurrent, common problem of internal hazing, which meant that every picture was totally fogged up, with incredibly low contrast and this unsightly blooming in the highlights. Now, whilst I could salvage some of the shots, it really kind of ruined it for me. Now, I am fully aware that film wasn't entirely to blame for this particular failure, but it became the scapegoat for a morass of dissatisfactions that had been brewing internally with me for some time. It was hard to escape the thought that if I had been shooting digital on those days, the defect with the lens would have been immediately apparent, and I wouldn't have thrown a bunch of time and hard-earned cash down the Swanee. One of the cultural tropes that commonly pops up in these inspirational videos that seem to proliferate across YouTube like a virus is that you should strive to document your life, and that for some reason film is apparently an especially suitable medium to achieve that goal because of the limited shots you have per roll or whatever it might be. Well, I have to say that whilst that is quite a sweet idea, in practice I was sick of losing memories as a result of that choice. Now, for whatever reason, recently I have felt the urge to return to shooting film once again. This hasn't been the result of any conscious or deliberate desire to change the way that I am taking pictures. Rather, I suspect the truth is just that I've had enough time pass between the horrors of before to forget what they were like, and I've come to yearn once again for the physicality and the tangibility of the older cameras that I've got such a connection to. So now I've been working through the piles of undeveloped spools that I've left gathering dust in my cupboards for the past couple of years. I'm still going through the process of developing and scanning all of the black and white films for myself, remembering just how time consuming that can be. However, there is also now an independent film lab called Collabs, which is just a 10 to 15 minute walk from my flat, and they charge just £5 per roll to develop colour film, both 35mm and medium format, so long as you don't need scans or prints. Now, whilst that is still a wee bit more than I'd like to pay, particularly as I remember how cheap I used to be able to develop film for, it seems now like that might be a reasonable way for me to maintain some kind of regular film shooting activity. So far, I've gotten pictures back that I shot with my Rollei 35S on holiday, as well as some random moments from the summer of lockdown in 2020. And similarly, I've now been consciously shooting with my film cameras as I've gone about my everyday life again. None of these pictures are especially brilliant, I'll be the first to admit that, but I've been pleasantly surprised to discover memories that I didn't even know that I had, as well as capture new ones along the way. To be fair though, I could probably have done without a reminder of the time that I looked like Charles Manson over lockdown. I guess that is one of the dangers of documenting your life. So going forward, this video effectively acts as my commitment to myself to shift my perspective and reinvest in shooting film more regularly, both financially and in terms of time and energy. The truth is that I don't need to feel pressure to use film all the time like I once did, or to treat the choice between digital and analog as a binary one. Often in the past, I would feel like I had to have a set that was cohesive so I could upload it to a blog, but actually both of the mediums can coexist simultaneously and provide alternative ways of seeing and also preserving my own experiences, and that in of itself is enough. Part of the reason that I'm sharing this here is that it seems inevitable that I will go through a similar period of hatred for film at some point in the future, and hopefully looking back in these reflections and these particular articulations might help me shift some of my perspective again a wee bit quicker. Or maybe help you shift yours if you're in a similar position, I don't know. I don't have the confidence of a 24-year-old YouTuber that is having existential revelations for the first time after moving out from their parents' house and into a van, #van life. If you want that kind of thing, complete with drone footage and moving montages about youthful desires, then there's plenty of it to be found out there. Here, there are no answers, only more questions. A few months ago, I shared this video where I was talking about how I'd come to this point in my life where I felt like I really hated photography, despite it being something that I loved and felt like was such an integral part of my identity for so long. Part of the reason for this, I think, is that photography can force you to confront the question of the mundanity of your everyday life and whether or not you're actually doing enough to warrant documentation in the first place. And in my case, I think I took that to the extreme in the sense that no matter what I was doing, it never felt good or valuable or momentous enough to use up my film stock, particularly the special films that I was hoarding. And in the end, it became this situation where I never took any photos and never documented anything. And looking back now, I kind of feel sad about that because there were plenty of moments that I could have captured on film that would have been so much more meaningful in some ways than just bashing them off on an old digital camera. Either way, I'm glad that now there is something of a semblance of spark of passion again for something that I really enjoy. And over the next few months, I'm going to make a conscious effort to try and find a healthy relationship with film. And if I don't, then it just means in a few months' time, I'll be able to make another video talking about how I hate film photography and you should all quit it and sell all your cameras and everything else. So either way, I win. If you'd like to see some of my pictures and follow along on this glorious journey, then you can do so at allmyfriendsarejpegs.com. There's a link below. You should go and click that because what is the point of this if not sheer self-observation? Observation? Observation is not a word. Well, it might be a word. I don't know.